Hello. Over the next 5 minutes, I'm going to talk about a great little strategic planning tool called the Three Horizons. Attributed to Bill Sharp, it's a popular tool to guide strategic planning, thinking, and discussions. The key thing is that it asks us to focus not just on the here and now, but to take a longer term view to our decisions and the strategies that we develop for our organization. So the three horizons are essentially three timelines to think about. So three dimensions of time, essentially. Business as usual is the here and now. So those are today's challenges, often things that we're likely to be reacting to. So today's pressures, concerns, and challenges. Disruptive innovation is our second horizon. This is the stuff that may be happening in our industry, but may not be happening in the business. So if you look at your most edgy and cutting edge competitors, what are the discussions which are happening in those businesses? What are they thinking and planning? That tends to be disruptive innovation. It could be potentially threatening activity. So whether there are organizations using technologies such as AI and machine learning to do what you do in a more cost-effective way. So again, those are classic disruptors. So it's really just thinking about what could be impacting us in 3 to 5 years' time, directly. What's coming over that second horizon? The third horizon is where we sort of think a little bit more in terms of science fiction, perhaps, and this is where we take a longer term view. What will the world look like in 2030? What will our customers be doing or seeking in, say, 8 years' time? That would be the third horizon, where we become a bit more speculative. Perhaps we need to be a little bit more creative in our thought processes there. Certainly, there's far less certainty. But are we beginning to think about threats and opportunities on that more distant third horizon? So it's a bit indicative, and it probably depends on the industry that you work in, which which numbers you would actually attribute to this. But conventionally speaking, you might say that business as usual is the immediate now in the short term. So anything between 1 and 3 years. So if we're looking at our plan, say over the next 18 months, that would be business as usual. Disruptive innovation, to things which are possibly happening on the fringes, but that could be impacting us directly in 2 to 5 years. The disruption, transformative innovation, again, that more perhaps crystal ball gazing perspective on things, possibly 5 to 10 years. Although it really just depends on how fast things move in your industry, how subjected you are to technology and technological change. That could shorten these timeframes quite considerably. So it all depends. And again, another way perhaps of thinking about the three horizons, the business as usual could be focusing on technologies and solutions that you've got in the business, that you've invested in, that you understand, and that you can use today. Disruptive innovations could be technologies which you haven't yet engaged with, but are there, but you haven't necessarily had the time to experiment with. And of course, transformative innovation, right on the cutting edge of things. That's when we kind of go to technology conferences in Japan and South Korea and start to see holograms popping up and all that sort of thing. But a useful thought process to begin to think about how could we potentially use some of these really emerging technologies. So lots of different ways of thinking about this. The key thing is that our focus needs to be spread between the three, particularly if you're in a strategic role, if you're a senior leader in the business and you have some responsibility for its longer term survival or growth, then are we thinking about all three horizons? One challenge with being a little bit too focused on horizon one is that as time passes, it's possible that our investment or our work or the energy that we're putting into today's work will become less relevant over time. So as time passes, today's work or today's solutions may become less relevant to our clients, or even to ourselves. It may be that, that we develop new solutions that put today's investment out of use. The second horizon, our focus and energy there may be less immediately relevant today. So if we sort of see on the left-hand side of that chart being here and now, it may be that any work that goes into Horizon 2, planning or delivery, the results may not be entirely clear. And that's perhaps one of the reasons why people may not invest in it. So because Horizon 1 is likely to be delivering immediate results for us and is likely to be highly relevant, it's also the case that Horizon 1 could absorb all of our time and energy, which is a mistake. But so Horizon 2, not as directly relevant. As time passes, so as we get into that middle distance, sort of, perhaps 3 years, something like that, it will become significantly more relevant than the work that's going into Horizon 1. So if it may be a little bit speculative today, but so for example, experimenting with artificial intelligence in how we work may not be a priority today, but it's likely at some point in the near to middle distance. But if we go with the theory, then as time passes, again, even our work in Horizon 2, so what we know is disruptive today, in say 3 years' time, may be less so and may become less relevant as well as time passes. And Horizon 3, this is the stuff that, as you can see on the left-hand side, may have almost no relevance to today's customer or today's problem, but as time passes, will slowly creep up. And as we can see, as we get to perhaps 5 or 6 years out, may become very highly relevant. Of course, with this being speculative and us essentially trying to read the tea leaves as we think about the future, there are no guarantees, but it's still likely that by just being aware of what's happening on that third horizon, or the possibilities of what's happening there, there will come a point in the not too distant future where that will suddenly start to become really quite important. I suppose if we think about this in terms of the automotive industry, where there's a lot of talk of this at the moment with 2030 and changes in rules and regulations, that a really efficient petrol engine might be our Horizon 1, say for someone like Mazda or Ford or someone like that. So right now that's probably going to be their best sellers, but if everything was invested in efficient little petrol engines, crikey, they would be in trouble in about 5 years' time. So anyway, as we kind of think about Horizon 2, I suppose that's going to be electric vehicles, all that sort of thing, which are slowly starting to sort of creep into the average person's driveway. Maybe not the average person, maybe the somewhat well-off driveway now. It's not unusual to see an electric vehicle there. So it's certainly not mainstream, and it's certainly not going to be priority number one, but it's definitely getting there. Horizon 3, what do you think? Who knows? Hydrogen, possibly. Maybe there's talk of e-fuels, flying cars. Anyone's guess. So, but nonetheless, if you were the chief executive of Ford Motor Company, you would certainly want to be doing a little bit of work on the fringes there, just thinking about what will the future customer want. My guess actually is going to be that you go on your phone and you order up a little box that arrives and you get in it, and then it takes you to wherever you want to go. And the human being has very little to do with it. It's just your mobile phone talks to it and tells you where you need to get to. It'll be something like that, I think. Anyway, but that would be a Horizon 3. Another example where I think it's quite interesting to think about with the three horizons is modern warehousing. So the organizations, businesses that build warehouses are investing a huge amount at the moment in concrete technology. And the reason is that the organizations such as Amazon and whatnot that want warehouses have mandated that they need the floors to be perfectly flat. Very expensive to do, extremely difficult, particularly when you're talking about thousands of square feet. But nonetheless, it's really important. So it would be much simpler to allow for small imperfections. Certainly for Horizon 1, it probably wouldn't make any difference at all. But why are organizations like Amazon, etc., asking for perfectly flat floors, well, they're thinking about Horizon 2 and Horizon 3, which is going to be increasingly focused on automation and robots and that sort of thing. And human beings will become far lesser spotted in warehouses, what with all of their demands for union activity and that sort of thing, and equal, rights and fair pay. I imagine that the bosses of Amazon will be very keen to be focused on Horizon 2, which will be fewer human beings, far more robots, hence perfectly flat floors. So I suppose that was what you could say as being a coherent strategy, where the work that we undertake in Horizon 1 aligns to where we're going to be in Horizon 2 and Horizon 3. An incoherent strategy, where we invest or take action in a way that's convenient and expedient for Horizon 1, but actually causes us real problems in 3 years' time, when we do start to bring in different technologies and that sort of thing. So it's almost where we start competing against our future self. So another useful application of the 3 horizons is to challenge ourselves a little bit and think, are we being coherent? Is the investment and the work that's happening now positively supporting where the business is going to be in 3 years' time and 5 years plus? Coherent strategy. So a couple of questions to think about. How much time do you dedicate to each of the horizons? Are you completely absorbed in Horizon 1, reacting to the here and now, or are you going to conferences, putting your head up and out and looking at what's going on in the wider industry, changes, disruptors, new technologies? Do you have some time invested in raising your awareness of really what Horizon 2 or even Horizon 3 might look like? What might your future customer look like? Whoever it is that your organization serves in 2030, what might they be looking for from organizations such as yours? That would be a Horizon 3 consideration, I guess. So how much time do you dedicate to each of the horizons? And a second question is the strategy that you're working on, where you are making decisions, making investments in the business. Are you coherent in your thinking? Are you sort of challenging yourself so that investment today will tally essentially with the future direction of the business, so that we're not going to have to undo that work or work around it at some point in the future? As I said, very simple to have warehouses with small imperfections in the floor, and that would certainly be expedient, but ultimately we become our own worst enemy when we have robots scuttling around the place. So is our strategy coherent? Are our decisions aligned with our future horizons? There we go. So useful little tool, and again, it's a great it's some great questions, I think, that it raises when we're facilitating strategic discussions and that sort of thing, and I hope you find it helpful.